why did everybody decide that they had to deal with alcohol, right? Like we live in a world where everybody's drinking, everyone's out doing it all the time, right? So it's kind of like goes completely against the grain to kind of think, well, actually, I'm going to stop doing this, and I'm gonna do something different. Like I know that I wanted the second half of my life. That's hopefully I live to 90 something. But I knew that I wanted the second half of my life to look completely different from the first half, because I thought I've done that already. I've done all those things and I wanted the next bit to look different. So why did you guys decide that you wanted to stop drinking or cut back? Kathleen?
I had like that uh-oh voice, that little voice inside that would be like, uh-oh, when I acted just outside of my moral compass. Like, not to be like I'm no Puritan or prude, but I would do things that I would forget I was married. I would forget that I didn't do that type of drug. I would forget that that I didn't do the things that I was doing on a regular basis intentionally. I was unintentionally doing a bunch of stuff. I lost my choice in what I was doing because I was drinking all the time. And drinking lowers inhibitions in lots of ways.
Yeah, absolutely. How about you, Darcy?
The first red flags started coming up for me when I decided to not drink when I was going to shows. I'd be like, you know what? I'm not going to drink when I go see this show. So I'm going to start. So I remember the show. So I'm like, oh, I'm going to go see the Jesus Lizard and I want to remember the show. So I'm not going to drink. And that's when I realized, isn't that interesting? I'm not going to drink at this show, so I will remember it. That was the first like sort of red flag when I knew that I might need to make a change. Now, fast forward 10 years later, when I was on the floor in my closet drinking by myself, and my whole family is telling me that I might need to go to rehab. That's when I knew that I was going to have to stop drinking. That's a whole different story. There's a long story behind that one, but there were a lot of red flags in between there.
Suppose the strange thing, Darcy, though, is like back in the day when you thought, I'm going to stop drinking and go to these theatre shows, probably people around at that point would be thinking, well, what's she doing? Like, why would she want to do that? Like, that's what we do when we go to the theatre, right? And they let you get all the way to the point where you're in the closet, and then they have to tell you that now you need to stop drinking, right? So it's almost like you got to wait until you're in the closet drinking until people are actually going to say, do you know what I mean? Like alcohol doesn't suit you.
It was really painful too. Like the whole 10 year, that whole period of time was like extremely painful. Like the back and forth, all the cognitive dissonance, like, what's wrong with me? It was the conversations back and forth between the other people, myself. Yeah. Yeah, that's another question.
That voice.
All the feelings are coming up and I'm like, it's a swirl. I'm like, oh no.
How about you, Lance?
Well, a couple of things comes to mind. So I kind of I've said this before, I consider myself a gay gray area drinker. And by that, I mean, I had really good guardrails. So I really put limits on my drinking in the evening. Like it was 1 bottle of wine. Okay, maybe a bottle and a glass. Okay, maybe a bottle and 2 glasses. But that was definitely the stop. And then, marijuana became legal in California. So I added that to the mix. So that kind of stopped the progression of the drinking. I was really good at detoxing. So good at going to dance classes in the morning, hitting the gym, going to a Zumba class. Everybody like, oh, we're detoxing to retox. So it was part of the culture. So I didn't have a big rock bottom. Nobody thought I had a problem with drinking. I never had a DUI because I live in San Francisco and didn't have to drive. My work I was very successful at work. I was successful in all these areas of my life. I was meditating, I was doing yoga. So I kind of, my rock bottom was realizing like, fuck, I'm never going to have a rock bottom. This could go on forever. And that was a real fucking rock bottom, to realize I was never going to have a rock bottom. I would get jealous of folks who had rock bottoms, because at least I would think, at least they have a black and white map now. And it was so unacceptable for me to think that I was going to go on like this the next 20, 30 years of my life. And I've got like the last third of my life left. And so that was a big wake up call. And the other thing that I want to say about this was, when I first started drinking when I was younger, I associated alcohol with rebellion and being an individual. And after doing the 30-day live alcohol experiment, I was like, fuck, I'm a sheep. Like, alcohol is just like cigarettes. We are drinking not because we think we want to, but because we've been programmed and highly marketed. And we live in a culture that worships and orients everything around alcohol. So one of my favorite quotes is, "You're not crazy for feeling crazy in a crazy world." So I just have I'm an old punk rocker. So once I got that, I was like, fuck yeah, I'm rebelling, man. Alcohol free is the new punk rock.
Yeah, I suppose it's
So I was
strange.
very motivated.
Even where you live as well, like the whole gay scene and being in the middle of the gay scene, it's kind of, I'm not in the middle of the gay scene in London. I was, years back when I was kind of coming out and stuff, and it's all at night. Like you can't be gay unless you're going to go to gay clubs and bars, right? Like it's changing now, I think, but back then it was kind of, that's just what you did. You just went to a bar to try and meet people, and while you were there, you drank.
Yeah, and you see, I live in the Castro in San Francisco, which is a neighborhood of a lot of bars. And just as an example, last summer, we lost a young man, 33 years old, who was a big part of our community, designer. He did work in the bars. And during COVID, he drank himself to death.
Wow.
And 33 years old. And to raise money for his funeral, they had a benefit at a bar. God, what was it called? It was about poppers. It was a play on words, and see you later. But anyway, it was just mind-blowing to me that this man died of drinking, and the benefit for his funeral was in a bar, and the whole play on words was a play on shots and see you later. I can't remember the exact wording now. It will come back to me. But yeah, heartbreaking.
It's like everything revolves around alcohol, right? The good times, the bad times, the weddings, funerals. How about you, Justin?
So I've been, I think there was a point in my life where I didn't see any problem with it. Like I just drank all the time. And there was a running commentary in my mind that it's not a big deal. It's what everybody else in my life is doing. But then I started to notice that like I would do it by myself more frequently, all the time, going to see people before, after. And there really wasn't much thought about not drinking, right? It was just like, this is what it is. This is what I'm going to do. And it wasn't until I think about this. So this morning, I have like an app that I started using before I stopped drinking. So it's almost 3 years. So about 3 years ago, 3 years ago today, I had a couple of days of not drinking, and then I decided to drink a bottle of wine. And I remember writing in the app, I was like, wow, it was like 7 days since I had drank, and then I did, and I was like, wow, and I remember it very vividly. It was so bad. It tasted so bad. And I used to love wine. And it was like, my first impression of the glass of wine was, this is so gross. I can't believe I'm drinking this. But it's like I forced myself to continue, right? And I wrote in the app, I was like, wow, I felt, I felt so good. And then I just felt like total garbage. And it was like those drops in feelings. And it's like, before that, because this was when I was starting to become curious of not drinking, it was just constantly like, you know, up and down, like, oh, I'm drinking, and there'd be terrible hangovers. Like my current partner, we were dating, and I remember I would go to sleep and he'd be over and it would just be drinking with friends, and I'd wake up and he'd be fine. And I would just look at it and be like, oh my God, I wish I was not feeling like this right now. Like, how are you doing this? How are you not a drinker? How are you living your life like this? And so for a long period of time, I was like trying to challenge all these thoughts about, you know, drinking as not being a bad thing, right? And then I had an opportunity to not drink for like 10 days, and I didn't drink, and it was so great. And then, you know, I just realized that I was letting myself down constantly, because I would say, well, I'm not going to drink today. And I would. And it just like happened all the time. And it just really got to the point where, you know, it was just, there was nothing good about it anymore, right? Like even relationships with people, it was just drinking, and I would just kind of zone out, and got to that point. So basically, to answer the question, it just, I don't, you know, it just, you know, it was just kind of, I was really sick and tired of being hungover, and I wanted to experience life. And I felt like I wasn't experiencing life, you know, like in this continuum of a day to day. It just felt like every morning it was dread and feelings from yesterday. And, you know, it was like when I started to gain days of not drinking and really experience that stuff, like I kind of realized that it's really pointless to me, and it was just making me feel terrible, you know, plus to add in family history of drinkers in the family and all that stuff. So yeah, it was just really a matter of like, I listened to a podcast and they were like, I just couldn't deal with another hangover. And I was like, wow, it's that simple. Like, I can't do that either. Like, I just can't do that. Right. Like, I'm done with that. And that was the last day I drank. I was like, I had a drink in the afternoon, morning-ish, after drinking all Labor Day. And it was like I was hungover like 5:30, and I'm like, this is it. Like, I can't do this anymore. And that was the last time I had a drink. And so it's just a matter of, you know, I wasn't aware that it was a problem. I wasn't aware that it was, I just thought it was just like, well, you know, this is what I'm going to do in my life. This is what everybody does, you know, but it's not.
Yeah, so it's so true. And what you said is exactly like, it just reminds me of exactly how I used to be. Like, I used to not want to drink in the morning, wake up feeling like crap, get to like 12 o'clock or something, 1 o'clock, I'm feeling a bit better now. I'm going to clock out from work. I'm still telling myself I'm not going to have a drink. I'm on the bus. I'm telling myself I'm not going to the pub. And then before I know it, I've gone past my house and I'm at the bar, and it was like automatic. Like, I didn't even have a choice in the matter after a while. And it was so automatic. And when I worked that piece out, the automatic thing, that was kind of the key for me to letting go. But yeah, I think everyone experiences those same kind of feelings of just not being in control.
Yeah. You know,
how about you, Jeff? Sorry,
Jeff, I'm sorry, Jeff, I just want to say one other thing. It's really short. You're making me realize this there was a period where I was like that, and I had like I had a lot of free days, and I just like, it's like I got so worried about how focused I was on drinking that I was like, no, Justin, this is not normal. Like, what are you like pacing around? I'm like living in Amsterdam. I'm like trying to find a bar, and I'm like, what am I doing? Right. And I would have to just like, and then it was in New York City, it was the same exact thing. And it was like, just, this is not something I can do anymore. Take it away, Jeff.
Take it away, Jeff.
Take it away.
Oh God, this is a long story for me. I mean, I think for me, it's like, you know, when I think back on it, there was such a long period of time where it's like, I feel like I didn't really think about it at all. Like, I just figured, you know, it'll end one of these days, you know, like I'll get, you know, because I was always, my whole life, I feel like I've been trying to fix something. Like, I've always been trying, you know, there's always was something that needed to be fixed, you know, whether it was losing weight or whether it was, you know, getting, you know, whether it was losing weight or getting a better body or being, you know, stopping doing drugs or whatever it was a bit, making more money, having a better job. It was just always something, you know, doing something more. So it wasn't like I was constantly thinking, oh, I need to stop drinking or stop doing this. So it was always just something. But it wasn't really until like, I think probably the last, probably 3 years ago, where it was just like this constant like binge. And we're not talking about, you know, I was like white knuckling it until noon. Like we're talking about waking up, drinking, going to work, drinking. I mean, it was just this, and it's so gross to think about now. And then to think that all the anxiety of hiding that and like, you know, the water bottles and the weird is this, it's just kind of gross. But it's also, there was also this, it's not excitement, but this kind of like, there was all this energy around the hiding, I don't know, does that make, I don't know if any of you guys.
I totally agree.
That's why I had that little freak out a little bit ago, and I'm like, ask another question because all this is coming up about the hiding.
Yeah, no, totally.
Yeah, I mean,
the White Claw, it's just seltzer. No, it's just not.
Yeah, because you have like, I mean, I had to be prepared. Like I couldn't go from point A to point B without knowing where is my next drink. How long is it going to be before I have? Do I have it with me? Is there a drink on the other side? I mean, there was so much energy spent in that. And that was exhausting. And I think that was where it was just, and that's where it just all started to unravel. And so that was when I knew that it was, that was when it was more of a, I need to do something about this. I need to do something about this. And then, but then that was also where the desperation starts to come in, where it's like, this isn't, because there were times throughout my journey where it was like, it's okay, this is fine, you know, everybody loves to come back. I'm down, but I'll be up again. But as you know, certainly from my experience, I feel like, you know, it's as we get older in our community, it just feels like it's not worth it anymore. You know, like it's hard enough, you know, being 20 in the gay community, try, you know, much less being 50. And so it does, the desperation became a lot more like, I don't know that this, I don't have another comeback in. And that was this last time. And that was scary. So, but, and I guess it was one of, you know, like if I hadn't gotten this kind of message that I guess came through the book, or just Annie's, the compassion and the grace and all of that I had never heard in any recovery program. It was, you know, you're broken, you're damaged, you're diseased. That was the turnaround. That was, you know, and so that was.
You're making it like super emotional.
I'm sorry. That was what, you know, made the difference, was to be able to stop and look at it that way. And being able to
Twins are crying.
Look at it from a, you know, and now that I have stopped drinking, it isn't about the drinking. Like it was never about the drinking. You know, it's, I can look at it now from such a deeper level that it's been all about the things I've used, the food, the drugs, the alcohol, to quiet the trauma, you know, and now I can start working on the trauma and looking at that and trying to sort through all of that and why all of that, you know, what, try and fix that and deal with that instead of continuing to use other things.
Well, that's great, Jeff. Look, you made Darcy cry, so that was
Well,
Darcy and
that-
Catherine, the twins. You made the twins cry.
I did not mean to.
it's amazing. I mean, we've all got similar stories. Like they're so different, but they're really similar in the sense that, you know, like we all got to a point where we just felt like something had to change. Like we've been doing the same thing over and over again, and we realized we kind of get to a point that we weren't quite in control of it, and that it was starting to control us in a way. We kind of got to a point where it, I suppose, the benefit and the cost started to outweigh the benefit. You know, in our younger years, we were kind of like, we could kind of suffer the hangover, but you know, when you're getting into like me, mid 40s, and you know, I hadn't bought a property and I'm in a debt management program and I'm having mental health issues, then you start to think, okay, like then maybe there's something that I need to be doing differently. And I think what's great about like the work that we all do is it is about compassion, right? It's about compassion for ourselves first. And we'll deal with the alcohol because we've got compassion for ourselves. It's not our fault. We can kind of get through these situations as long as we've got compassion for ourselves and we're actually like enjoying the process as well. And it's not a straight line, not for anybody. So great conversation today, guys.
I want to say I remembered what that fundraiser for the funeral for the young man was. It was Jell-O goodbye. So it was Jell-O shots, and the line on the flyer was Jell-O goodbye.
Oh wow.
So yeah, we're all older, and it gets harder as we get older, but I think it's important to remember that you know, the trauma of being marginalized when you're queer starts so young. And what if we got this message and this information when we were young? Would have saved me 25 years.
And a whole load of money.
Yeah.
I'd have 2 houses by now. Great. Thanks, guys.
Guys,
Thank you.
talk
Thank
soon.
Thank you.
And if you threw a party, invited everyone you knew, you would see the biggest gift would be from me, and the kind of touch would say thank you for being a friend.
Thank you.
Just stop recording.
That was a good one, you guys.
Well, I'll keep recording in case anything else comes up that's good. We want to use it.
Oh, we should.
You just
Annie
never
should-
know.
Annie should post that one for sure.
There's just gold. It could be gold in the outtakes.
Even my little like
Your eyelashes falling off.
well, but even my like little like my little thing in the beginning, it ties in later.